Up to this point, we've been concentrating on targeting the root of the 1 chord, namely that A. So you had some formulas, flat 7 going up to 1, flat 3 coming down to 1, and then a lot of variations involving both technique and interspersing some other notes in between. I want to take a little detour here and talk about your diagonal pentatonic scale form. So this is a little mini lesson of its own sitting right in the middle of this big course. In diagrams 1 and 2, you were primarily in the 5th position based off of your 6th string root, A minor pentatonic scale. And then you had all these other neighbor tones, and they're labeled in there, both with letter names and scale degrees. And if you're like most guys, you say, okay, that's a great way to have sort of a snapshot window approach to seeing information on the fingerboard. But you don't get that feeling of moving up and down, and let's face it, you want to have command of the entire neck. That's my goal in this course, is to help you play anywhere on the neck and know when it's going to have the same pitch but a different tone, or know where you want to play based on what you just played and where you're going, etc., etc. So what we're going to talk about now is the symmetry, the way the guitar is laid out, that allows you to see patterns and just move them across in octaves. Now back in diagram 8, you have all of the A's written out on the fingerboard, starting with the open A on the 5th string, the octave A, then the octave higher than that, and then we go back down to the 6th string, that's the same pitch as that open A, then the octave of that A, the octave of that A. So make sure you can move all the way left to right or right to left through these octaves. It's very, very important. And we're going to use these shapes. Now if you're not familiar with octaves, you need to have a quick tutorial on just octave shapes. The octave of any note on the 6th string will always be 2 strings over, 2 frets up. Doesn't matter what fingers you use, it'll always be that shape. And that same shape serves you if you're playing from the 5th to the 3rd string. Then as soon as you move from the 4th to the 2nd string, you have to add a fret on there because of that tuning discrepancy between the 3rd and the 2nd strings. And then that same shape serves you for the 3rd and the 1st strings. And then you have some other octave shapes, which you can start using those, but right out of the gate you want to know these 2 shapes because they're going to serve you in what we're going to talk about right now. I'd like for you to look at diagrams 9 and 10. Primarily, let's look at diagram 9. It's labeled A minor pentatonic, 6th string root, diagonal form, 2-3 layout. I look at information in terms of how the notes are laid out per string. So if we have 5 notes in the minor pentatonic scale, we're going to lay it out 2-3, and you'll see exactly how this works, and then we're just going to repeat that pattern all the way across the neck. Now this is essential if you're an intermediate or even a beginner lead player. You want to see these scales and be able to move because there are a lot of great sounds you get using legato slides, and etc., etc. So look at diagram 9, and I want you to play the flat 7 and the 1. Well, that should look familiar because you've had them over here. You've had these moves of flat 7 to 1 in your examples. So flat 7 to 1. Now, if you also look at chart number 3, and I want to talk about something here. Normally a chart in my lessons here consists of some information, either text or something like that, some theory formulas. So this is a little standalone chart. It's really examples, but I labeled it a chart because it ties right in with this diagonal scale form information. In chart 3, the first move is flat 7 to 1. Now this is all based over the A chord. In just a minute we're going to talk about how to play over the D and the E chords. So you already know this move, and you should know that all over the neck. Well, let's move that across the guitar. If we move it from the 6th string to the 4th string, you just move up 2 frets. And do you see those octave shapes coming into play? Likewise, if I move it from the 4th string to the 2nd string, I again see these octave shapes coming into play. Look at diagram 9, you'll see that I have the roots in red, those A notes, and so flat 7 to 1, you can see in chart number 3 we have that laid out flat 7 to 1. So make sure you can play this move. Let's play over jam track 1, and you'll hear how we're just going to move across in octaves. And then, seeing it as a major second interval, a whole step, I can do all those things. Legato slide, hammer on, pick both. I can do that. I can even just bend. I can go in. A lot of different things. All kind of different things that I can do, but I'm seeing this information. And remember, I was thinking about this before I came in this morning to shoot this video. It's very important that you think about how you visualize information on the neck. We all see things differently. But for me, I want to be able to layer things and reference things. So if I'm playing a blues where I just want to use minor pentatonic, I need to see all that on the fingerboard. Then if I want to sprinkle in something else, I see it in reference to A minor pentatonic. Or if I'm seeing arpeggios, I still can tie all these different things together. And that doesn't sometimes come naturally. So make sure that in your studies of the fingerboard, which in my world means sometimes the guitar isn't in your hand. A lot of the time it isn't. You're either thinking about the fingerboard or you're plotting information out. But anyway, in the study of the fingerboard, make sure that you're trying to connect and coordinate a lot of different components so that you have references, be the root of the chord form, things like that, the arpeggio. And that way, you'll be able to draw upon more resources. Because if you just study pentatonics, what are you going to play? Pentatonics. And I know that's what we're doing now, but make sure that you can connect the dots of all the different things that you learn and you build on it as the years go by. So you heard how that sounded. A strong move. We've already talked about it's going to be a really strong move, right? Now, I see that in this diagonal scale form. So now I want to talk about how to see this diagonal scale form and to play it. And I've given you a couple little shred examples, things to practice getting your fingers moving. In diagram 9, we have a whole step, a major second interval between the flat 7 and 1. It'll always be like that. Doesn't matter what string, does it? If we're playing 2 notes on one string, we'll always see a 2-fret interval. Fair enough? Make sure that's in stone. Then you connect the dots. We have a flat 3, 4, 5. That's all 5 notes of my minor pentatonic scale. Now you might be looking at this if you're already a player. You say, I already know this stuff. Okay, hang on. I'm going to give you a couple licks that maybe you don't know. But if we look at this shape, it's a 2-3 layout. 2 notes on the 6th string, 3 on the 5th string. And then the same thing occurs on the 4th string, 1 octave higher. In other words, 2 frets up the neck. And then the same thing occurs on the 2nd and 1st strings, 3 frets higher. We have to add that fret because of that tuning irregularity between the 3rd and the 2nd strings. So I have a 3-octave A minor pentatonic scale moving diagonally from left to right, from low to high in terms of pitch, and it's always a 2-3 layout. So I have either a So I have this great ability to be able to put legato slides in there, to see my bend. And it makes it a little more enjoyable, a little more musical, because you're not just playing in one position. Sometimes you don't get the same vibe of moving down and up the neck when you're staying in one position. Okay? Well, let's look at example or exercise 1 on chart number 3. And what we have here is a way to get really fast, and that's not your goal, but it's to get your fingers moving, and then we can build off of this. Now, we're going into the arena of legato, meaning smooth and connected. We will pick the bare minimum to get something going. I've got a little bit of gain going on here for a bluesy sound. And if I look at exercise 1, the only note I'm going to pick will be this C. Because if I have 3 notes on one string, I could play a lot of different ways. I could use one finger per note and use hammer-ons and pull-offs. But I want to stay in my rock blues posture where I'm using primarily my 1st and 3rd fingers. So I've got my hand comfortably around where I can access the C and the D. Make sure you can trill that nice and clean. A trill's a hammer-on pull-off combination. So my fingers, if you notice, are not coming in a classical posture. I'm actually seated with the guitar a little lower than normal to demonstrate this. Normally I'd have the footstool up 1 notch. So I've got a little lower, and it's more like a typical blues posture. I can comfortably get my hand around. I'm not doing this kind of number. So I have this move. Well, now I need to get up to the D. Well, if you look at the tablature on this particular exercise, you pick, hammer, legato slide up, legato slide back down, then pull off. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get 5 notes with 1 pick stroke. When you play the slide, relax your index finger. Don't drive with the parking brake on. Don't keep your 1st finger down. There's no need to. Now, I want you to be able to play that at any speed, but always have da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, straight rhythm. Da-da-da-da. And it'll heat up the tip of your finger. You get going for a while, burn the tip of your finger. Play it 1 octave higher, and you'll see that same move in exercise 2. Play it 1 octave higher, you'll see it in exercise 3. Okay? So right away, you're learning one lick, but you can play it easily on any string. And of course, we could go to other strings, but we're going to stay inside this 6-string rooted diagonal A minor pentatonic scale form. Well, that takes care of the first 5 notes. Excuse me. So we pick, hammer, legato slide back down, pull off, and then we're going to play one of those hammer-ons from nowhere. It works great with your third finger because you can get a little momentum and just kind of drop your third finger down. So we don't pick this A, you pull off and you hammer the A. So when you get it going, it's like this. I'm only picking the C, the very first note. And rhythmically, you'd probably phrase this as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. But you can move it anywhere you want in the measure. We're playing straight rhythm. Now, if you have some problems getting this A to sound here, go ahead and pick it, which means at the maximum for a legato sound, you're only going to pick when you move to a new string. So once you get this rolling, you pick the C, pick the A, pick the C, pick the A. If we play it against our track, we've got to play swing eighths. Exercise 2 is the same thing, 1 octave higher. Now, playing those swing eighths, those shuffle eighths, you've got to have your technique together. So don't just practice shredding on this, practice playing along with the track, staying in the pocket. That takes care of examples 1, 2, and 3. Well, let's go back up. In chart 3, we looked at our first move, which was flat 7 to 1. And then if we look at the other 2 locations where we have a major second interval, that is a whole step, we have it between the flat 3 and the 4, and the 4 and the 5. So all we're doing here is practicing those moves all the way across the neck in those octaves. Now we're going to put them to work because up to this point we've been playing primarily on just the A7 chord. Your jam track has been jam track 1, which was just the 1 chord, the first 4 bars of the 12-bar blues. So if we look at jam track number 2, it's the next 4 bars of the blues, so we've got 2 bars of a D7 and then 2 bars of the A7. What's the best note you can hit? A little pop quiz there, it'd be the root. So if we look at the lick flat 3 to 4, won't that be a strong riff when we play over the 4 chord? I'll demonstrate. This is jam track 2, and I'm playing in chart 3 the C to D move. Then I go back. So I'm thinking vertically. The chord changes. I reassess what I'm going to play because I want to be strong. Meaning I'm targeting the root of the chord. Now you might be saying, wait a minute, what does that mean? Because it says flat 3 to 4. Well, that's flat 3 to 4 if we're playing it over the A chord. Listen to this. Is that as strong as this? You can hear the difference, right? Higher octave. If I go, it's not horrible, but it's not as strong as. Well, that's because it's flat 3 to 4. But if I'm playing over the D7 chord, now it's the flat 7 to 1. And then I move. Okay, so you're going to take jam track 2 and you're going to play these 2 moves. G to A all over the neck. Well, actually, you're going to do it in reverse. You're going to go C to D, then you're going to go G to A. And do your legato slides. You can do your other little moves. For example, you could do this. You see how I'm just applying that technique that we learned back in one of the examples? I don't know which one it was, but the one where you're going, you're still dealing with flat 7 to 1. Okay, so now you should be able to play through jam tracks 1 and jam tracks 2 with more success, being stronger. Well, what happens when we go to jam track 3? Jam track 3 is the last 4 measures of the 12-bar blues. So we have E7, D7, A7, then back to E7. Look in chart number 3. We now have our third move D to E. Well, that in the key of A, that's 4 to 5. It's still a strong move against the A chord because you're targeting the fifth. The fifth is your second strongest tone. But if I analyze that in reference to an E7 chord, I'm back to that flat 7, 1 move. So in essence, what you have in chart number 3 would be flat 7 to 1 moves for the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. Now, you don't want to just sound like you're doing exercises, but that's going to happen at first. Don't try to play too much, and always know where you are in the progression. You can't just get focused on your playing. Listen and anticipate the chord change. If you're crashing and burning and you're not having success, it means don't play, listen, and just target maybe one of the chords in the jam track you're dealing with. So right now, here, you're practicing with jam track 3. So it goes along like this. First thing you should do is, there's E7, D7, down to the A7, bum, back up to the E7, bum. So I pick a note. I might not play. I want to feel solid with that move over the 5 chord. See how I'm showing you how to practice? Real simple, but you're building the foundation. Now I do it down the low octave. There's my D7. Here's my A7. I go back to E7. Okay, now I'm ready to add maybe the second chord. E7, D7. And you see what I'm doing? Once I know where the notes are, I start applying all the different technical options that I have available. Pulling off, legato slides, bends, pre-bends, picking, all these different things. Then I'm ready to stick in the 1 chord, and I'm done with the last 4 bars of the 12-bar blues. So, for example. You saw me start just playing a little bit. I could play anything I want, and you'll look. Well, I'm putting in something else, a natural third. You can add other scales and other things, but the point is that you're targeting the root. So if I just want to stay in A minor pentatonic, I might do something like this. Here's my move that I'm going to build off of. That's my target. I don't have to hit it at the beginning of the measure. I could do something like this. Do you see how I'm always cognizant of what the chord is, what chord's coming up, and how to play through the progression, targeting the root of each chord? Now, chart 3 demonstrates some examples that apply and some exercises that apply to diagram 9. I quickly want to talk about diagram 10 because, as I said earlier, my goal is to equip you to see the entire fingerboard. Well, this is where it gets kind of easy. You're simply going to invert what you played in diagram 9. In diagram 10, we have it labeled the same way, except that it's 5th string root diagonal form, and instead of a 2-3 layout, it's a 3-2 layout. Simply, this means if you go back to what you just learned, you had 2 notes and then 3 notes. The 3 notes were C, D, E, flat 3, 4, 5. If I move those over to the 5th string, won't they be 5 frets higher? Remember we talked about unisons? So anytime you want to duplicate a note, you go up the neck 5 frets. That's unless you're moving from the 2nd string to the 3rd string. Then it's just 4 frets. So if I see this move, let's say I'm practicing back exercise 1, and I'm just getting my chops together on it. I can play the same notes on the 6th string, 5 frets higher. Okay, now all I have to do is start here, and you can see it in diagram 10. And then my next move, well, now that looks different because you're on the 3rd and the 2nd strings. So watch this. Your shape, you've already established. If you're playing on strings that are tuned 5 frets apart, that interval's a perfect 4th, it'll always be this shape. Meaning, flat 3 is going to be in the same fret as flat 7, 4 is going to be in the same fret as 1. So if I'm up here, I go, and then I just duplicate it and 1 octave higher. And then what do? I have to I have to displace it up 1 fret. That is diagram 10. That is your 3-2 layout. So these 2 diagonal scale forms are very, very important. And then you can play the same moves over all of these using these legato slides. I can go. Now, just then when I played it, I went, what do you hear? 6 strings ringing. When you change strings, you know you have to pick your 3rd finger up for over here, right? Your 2nd finger should block that string, but also your 1st finger can dampen it. So, yeah, I'll demonstrate without any dampening. If I just do like this, I go, I get all kinds of noise. So you've got to block with both hands. Whenever possible, come in here. Sometimes we'll decide to pick. These are things that you want to work out once you get the lick moving a little bit. So in chart number 4, I have written out those same moves, the same thing we did in chart number 3. But again, you need to memorize what the notes and the scale degrees are and where you can use them. You have all the licks. I don't need to go through and explain this. This has been a bit of a long lesson here. But make sure that you see these diagonal scale forms, and they're easy. You just see 5 notes, either in a 2-3 layout or a 3-2 layout. And then you see them across following your diagonals of your octaves. That way you can start taking any lick you learn from these examples and plug it in different places and build in your soloing capabilities as far as where you play and what you play.